Hello, hello, and welcome to today's masterclass webinar. I'm Doug Brown, here with my business partner and good friend, Walt Hampton. We are so excited you decided to join us here today. You are in the right place. We're really excited to share with you some of the best practices that we've used to help our clients overcome 5 hidden obstacles to growing their law practice. And as a result, they've been able to do things like stop reinventing the wheel and making mistakes and having things be too expensive because they've got the right systems and processes. They've got the right people on the team so they can make money when they're not working and have time for a vacation. They're able to stay focused and feel good about being productive about what matters and make the most of their time. And they create a practice so they never have to look back on their career and wonder, what if? And if there's ever been a time not to sit there and wonder, what if, it's right now.
This, Doug, as we've talked, is an extraordinary moment in time. It is, in our opinion, our view, a once in a generation moment in time for us as lawyers, which is to say that you do not have to be a deeply steeped student in history to look back at the pandemic of 1918, 1919 and see that out of that there was nearly a decade of extraordinary expansion called the Roaring Twenties. And this is going to be our version of the Roaring Twenties. Yeah, there's a lot of whipsaw of emotion. Yes, there's a lot of chaos in the employment arena. We're going to talk about that. Yes, there's a lot of fatigue, but we are coming out the other side of this. And for those of us, and for those of you who are ready, who are poised on this threshold, it's going to be an extraordinary moment in time. We're already seeing it with our own clients, an influx of business, an influx of income, lots of good stuff. And with that, influx of clients and income, there is an influx of challenges. And we want you to be ready for this once in a generation opportunity, which is why we're so excited to be able to share this time with you. But before we jump in, you may be asking, who are these handsome people? And why should we listen to them? Well, I'm Walt Hampton, and I'm a 1984 graduate of the Cornell Law School. And when I came out of Cornell, I went with a big firm. I was in the Hartford, Connecticut area and was in the litigation department. Loved my work, loved my firm. They were very good to me over the years. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So I left and created my own litigation firm in the, I guess it was the late 80s, and grew that practice over the next 2.5 decades. I was the managing partner of that firm. We had multitudes of associates and assistants and paralegals and support team and all of that. And it was an extraordinarily gratifying experience. I wish I knew some of these things back then that we're going to share with you today, but hindsight is great. But that's why we're here. We're going to share with you some of those things. Through a very interesting set of circumstances, which is the topic of a whole nother webinar, I had the opportunity to meet and train with Tony Robbins. And I became one of Tony Robbins' elite level certified business coaches and worked for Tony for a period of time. And I loved coaching because I was able to take all of my legal and problem solving skills and bring it together collaboratively to work now with great lawyers and business professionals from all around the world to grow and scale their businesses. I was able to do that collaboratively, and I loved it. And like I said before, I was entrepreneurial in nature. So back in 2007, in the storm clouds of the Great Recession, we built this business that is bringing you this webinar today, Summit Success International, where we work with high-performing business professionals and executives from all around the globe, helping them to grow and scale their businesses. And I'm privileged to be able to do this with my dear friend and colleague and partner, Doug Brown, whose background will knock your socks off.
I don't know about that, but I'm so happy to be here. But I am so privileged to be at a place where I get to help successful attorneys accelerate their success, make more money, and live a more satisfying life. Because I started off my career as an attorney with a very good firm in private practice, and I was super supported. It was wonderful. And then I had an opportunity to go in-house at a corporation. And I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and I always thought, I wanted to be in-house and I wanted to be where the action was. And so I got to do that. And along the way, I got my business mind popped up, and I couldn't keep myself out of operations and other things. And I wound up getting business roles with more and more responsibility. And that's where I really learned the stuff they never taught us in law school. And frankly, many entrepreneurs don't know it. Things like how to actually lead and manage people, how to implement a strategy, a long-term strategy, how to sell and market, how to create systems and build and turn around business. I kind of became a turnaround guy. They put me into the really difficult situations and I'd go clean it up. And then after that, I got a chance to go learn how to teach everything I know when I became a program chair and professor at the Malcolm Baldrige School of Business, where I taught leadership and entrepreneurship and innovation. And so that was a tremendous to put the theory behind it and also learn how to teach this well. And that's when I started doing my executive coaching at the same time. Then I was recruited to become the executive director of the Connecticut State Bar Association, a great honor and privilege to have that role and return that organization to prosperity. And it was an experience being on the education side and having 10,000 lawyers as bosses. And then I got a chance to help a dear friend transition his 20-store jewelry chain to his daughters back in the family side of business and retail, because that was a good change from working with lawyers. And I became a Book Yourself Solid certified coach and started working with Walt. And along the way, with all these different roles in this different journey, I've learned a lot about what didn't work. Obstacles that I thought I saw, I didn't see clearly, a bunch of stuff I didn't even know was coming down the road. And that helped me find my path. And now I get the opportunity to help others like you do the same. You see, we've been doing this collectively an awful long time, and we've learned ourselves and from others that sometimes the biggest problems are the ones you can't see clearly. We also know that when you identify those obstacles, your attorney's mind can solve that problem, just like you identify the issues in your legal case. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What we see as the top 5 obstacles to growing your law firm, things you might not be able to see clearly, but when you do, you'll be able to unlock the power to build the life and the practice you want. So the first obstacle is one we work on with almost every single one of our coaching clients. And it is the place to start. It's not having a clear, articulated destination or goal of what you're trying to accomplish and grow your practice to.
Seems really clear, but it's usually something that most people think about and know they should have, but don't. Yeah.
So when I ask clients as we're talking about, what are your goals? Well, I just want to match last year. I want to make more money. I don't want to work as much. I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. I'm exhausted. I'm never getting ahead. It's never enough. I just don't feel like I can win, or I can't slow down to take the break I need. It's like Tim, one of my clients, super busy litigator, very successful practice, also had a role as a general counsel to a lot of government agencies. And he was used to getting a lot done during the day, really a hard charging guy. And when he showed up, he said, it feels like I'm playing whack-a-mole all day long. Remember that game, whack-a-mole?
I played that.
Yeah, he wanted help with the day-to-day, but he really wanted to put everything in context so that he knew he was building towards something. And because he knew and his wife knew it wasn't sustainable. So what I helped him with was the opportunity to really, when you solve this problem, you have a very clear roadmap of where you want to go. It's like setting your GPS. And when you do that with purpose, it gives you tremendous power to set your priorities, to manage your energy, and to be in control rather than just responding to whatever happens to come up all day long. And you're actually able to make investments for growth. And when I first started doing this work, I wondered why lawyers are really smart people. Why don't they do this? I realized I learned it along my path, but nobody ever taught it to lawyers. It was just get in and bill the hours and do the work. So there's so much in the weeds, you don't really have a chance to slow down and step back. The good news is I've found that the people that I'm working with have a lot of the answers in their head, 80% of the answers. They just haven't seen how to articulate it, and they haven't been able to make it really clear so it doesn't trip them up.
I love that you use the term slow down and step back, Doug, because this is what's required at this juncture. And with this, it opens up an entire universe of opportunity, as well as a unique branding proposition. I mean, there are a bazillion of us as lawyers. And I want to suggest that when we think about some of these questions I'm about to pose, these questions also become our unique branding proposition. So I often will speak to law school classes, and I will speak to a law school class of, let's say, 600, which I do frequently. And that entering class, if I ask them to raise their hands, how many know why they want to be lawyers? About 50% of their hands go up. That's all. And the truth is that for many of us, and I was included in this, law school was a default choice. I was the oldest son of an Irish Catholic mother. Priesthood didn't work out because the rector caught me too many times with some sweet young thing in the moonlight. My dad was a physician. I went to medical school for a while, loved medical school, but realized I didn't like sick people very well. Door number 3 was law. My grandfather had been a lawyer. I thought, okay, law must be it. And it took me a long time to realize that in order to go the distance in the law, I needed to reconnect with why it mattered to me to be a lawyer, why I wanted to do this work, what I believed about the work, and to get really crystal clear about what I wanted to create. Simon Sinek has a wonderful book, Leadership Guru. He says, your why is the place to start. Start with why is his book. Your why is your rocket fuel. Your why is what gets you up in the morning. It's what helps you go through the obstacles. It's helped you overcome the resistance. And ultimately, your why, because it's unique to you, begins to infuse the copy on your website and on your LinkedIn profile. And it begins to become your unique brand identity when you reconnect with that. And so it's not a one-stop exercise here to do, but I want to invite you in to think about why the work matters to you. Why do this work? Now, looking back, as I realized that I leaned into this question, for me, at the end of my practice, it was doing criminal defense, helping good kids reclaim a future for themselves. And to this day, decades later, I get letters saying, thank you, Mr. Hampton, you gave me my life back. So I want to invite you to get clear on what it is you want for your practice. And I want to invite you to get clear on what you want for your life. Because we have the greatest profession on the planet. And being a lawyer is not the totality of who we are in the world. And so one of the things we work with our private coaching clients is this little graphic called the Wheel of Life. And what we encourage our clients to do in the beginning and throughout the course of our work is to keep track of this wheel of life, because it's the wheel that we go down the road of our life with. And it can get kind of flat from time to time, which is to say that many of us as lawyers are single-mindedly focused on our money, our financial work and our worth and our career life. And a lot of times those things like our health and wellness begin to suffer, our relationships suffer, and we don't really pay attention very much to the F word. and I'm a big fan of the F word. Stop, get your minds onto the wheel of life. I'm talking about fun and recreation.
Yes.
So I would invite you, as you think about how are you doing on your wheel of life, because all of these areas of your life inform and support how you show up as the powerful lawyer or solicitor that you want to be in the world.
And so the thing to do is start by plotting out where you think you are on the wheel right now to see where you have an opportunity to improve. We have to face the brutal facts if we're going to improve.
See things as they are, not worse than they are, not better than they are. But once we see things as they are, we can begin to make some changes so that we can increase our resourcefulness and our resilience. And I use those words very intentionally right now because we're seeing in the world, we're seeing among our colleagues, we're seeing among clients, this depth of fatigue and brittleness as a result of everything we've been through over the last 18 months. And as I said, extraordinary opportunity ahead, and we've got to get there. And we can't do it on flat tires. So this is one exercise we take our private coaching clients through, and there's another exercise that we often go through in our annual planning and our quarterly planning, and that's connecting again with what you really, really value. And so the exercise we do, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it today, but I invite you to think about it after you leave our program today. You can come back to this slide. You're going to get it with the recording. You'll get it after our time together. Or you can just do a simple exercise of drawing a line down a piece of paper on the left-hand side, right down the top 5 things that you value. And it could be like family, it could be health, it could be learning, whatever it is, write it down. And then on the right-hand side, write down the top 5 places where you spend your time. Now, oftentimes the right-hand list is work, office, work, court, closings, work. Nothing wrong with either list, friends. Nothing wrong with either. Both lists are just fine. But where most of your stress, most of your overwhelm comes from is the incongruity, the lack of balance between the two lists. And the more, this is some of the work, the deep work we do, the more we can get the congruity between these two lists so that we're actually spending our time, and we're going to give you some good tools on how to make this happen, that we're actually spending our time on what we say we value, we show up much more powerfully and resourcefully for the people that we are called to serve in the world.
Yes. You know, this is sometimes when I'm trying to take clients through this, they want to skip over it. They want to just get right to, come on, let's get to the stuff. But this is the stuff, because as Walt said, it's the foundation. Like my client, David, he came to me because he had a really busy practice. He's successful. And he was trying to plan for the future because at some point his more senior partner was going to be leaving, and he had some staff that had been around for a while. And he really needed to work on a long-term plan for his business. But he was so stuck in the day-to-day, just trying to keep up, that we had to get that out of the way first. And then when we did, he came out of it not only using his time better, but he felt like he had a clear roadmap of what he needed to do. He was acting with much more intention, both on a daily, a weekly, and a monthly and an annual basis. And this was like a revelation to this very experienced lawyer that just a little bit of the work that we've described can have transformational effects on your practice like it did for him. So here are a couple of action steps for you. Again, part of the exercises. We spend time here because it's so important. It's called Imagine What's Possible. And so the first step, suspend disbelief, turn off your lawyer's critical mind that figures out why things won't work, and imagine there were no barriers of any kind, and you could have exactly the life that you wanted. It's just what you want it to look like. Write it down. Allow yourself the privilege of writing it down without questioning. And then what kind of impact would that make? What would it mean to you to achieve that? When I had this conversation with one of my clients, Marty, for her, it meant that she'd be able to spend more time with her children. And she was almost in tears about it. It was that powerful for her. And then imagine what it would mean if you didn't achieve that, and then pick out a first step, because you have to pick out a first step to get in action.
I know I'm looking at my syntax. I know it's not quite my. I guess maybe it's my turn to talk.
It is your turn.
It is my turn to talk. Okay. But I just want to underscore the action piece, because a lot of times we'll come to CLEs or webinars or programs and we'll gather these ideas and check the box. Yeah, I did this. I got. But if ideas were all that were required for our success, we'd already be rich and thin and living on the beach and not spending our time with two handsome business coaches. We'd actually be having this amazing life that Doug asks you to imagine. And so doing these steps will begin that pathway for you. And without further ado, I want to lead in, Doug, if it's okay, to talking about the next hidden obstacle, the next thing that gets in the way for way too many lawyers, and that is not focusing on the right client mix. I made this mistake early on when I left the big firm and started my own firm. I was hungry. I wanted to serve lots of people. And so I began to just take anything that came in the door. I didn't have a lot of clarity and focus. And as a result of that, I was always shifting gears. I was moving from a family matter to a estate matter, to a litigation matter, to a personal injury matter. And because I was always shifting gears, I was always like one step behind. I was pretty willing to take just anybody in the door. Years later, in becoming a business coach, I learned the principle of a client avatar that I'm going to talk with you about in a moment. But the idea is that you do not want to take just anybody with a pulse and a checkbook. Now, I said that one night at a county bar association in Hartford, Connecticut, to a wonderful group of colleagues, and we were all standing around sipping some nice Argentine Malbec. And one of my dear friends looked at me and said, "Oh, Walt, we don't really require a pulse." And so we have a tendency to want to do the work, but we also have the tendency to want the income. And so we're not as selective as we should. And as a result of that, we're not really doing the legal work that lights us up. You know, if we can connect with that why I talked about earlier, you know, there's a why that fuels the work, and that's not supported necessarily by just about anything. You know, if your why, like it was for me, ultimately was helping young people get through their crazy adolescence so they could have bright futures unencumbered by criminal stuff, it wouldn't have been really good for me to focus on admiralty law. That wouldn't have fueled the fire for me. And then the other thing is, and this is related to all this, is that we tend to take those bargain shoppers who are not going to pay us what we're worth, pay you what you're worth. So you feel then, the feeling is that you're not doing the work that you're really loving, that you're tired a lot of the time, you're worn down, you're worried about making mistakes. I cannot tell you, I had hair back in the beginning of my practice. You're always worried about making so many mistakes. You worry about the entrepreneurial roller coaster of feast and famine, and you're nervous all of the time. You know, right now we're kind of in a privileged moment where the fire hose is kind of on, and we're hoping that it stays on. I know it's going to stay on, but the problem is if we don't get these things, these obstacles nailed down, we ride the entrepreneurial roller coaster of feast and famine.
A good example of one of my private coaching clients, Eric, is a partner in a general practice firm in the Midwest. And when he came to me, he was doing all kinds of criminal law and all kinds of family law, and he was massively unhappy. And we had to unpack what he really wanted to do, what his purpose was, which is the stuff we talked about earlier, because because he didn't have any definition around the clients he was going for, wasn't able to create a system to bring them in. And so he didn't have a good screening, and he would wind up taking clients because he was sympathetic with them and they didn't have enough money. So he would take less on a retainer, and it was a mess. But the opportunity for Eric, and what most lawyers overlook, is when you follow a system to bring the right clients to your door, they'll pay you what you're worth and you'll like working with them. And once we discovered this area for him, and it was family law, and even within family law, it was protecting the children, kind of like Walt said with when he was in criminal law. So when we focused on very specific people he wanted to serve and specific legal problems within family law, he was able to plug all that into a system and attract the people that he was meant to serve. So that's what, in the book Yourself Solid World, we call that the red velvet rope approach. It's not meant to serve everybody. Who do you let in to your red velvet rope? Now, one of the reasons,
I just want to jump in because we had a wonderful question she sent it to me privately, so I won't call her out by name, but a lawyer says, how do you balance choosing the right client mix with not making potential clients feel rejected and helpless? I'm placing myself in the shoes of a client in dire need of direction. I love this question so much because so many of us come to this profession because we're driven to help and to serve. And here's the scoop, and we'll talk a little bit about this further on, is that the more we niche down, the clearer we are about who we help and what we do in the world, the more we show up effectively for that. And businesses grow and scale exponentially. This is another program that Doug and I do around marketing. Businesses scale and grow and scale exponentially when you create great referral sources. So, if you think about medicine, they've, got kind of a screwed up business model, and it's not always the best thing from a teaching perspective, but they sure did get the referral thing down, because Marty, the dermatologist, refers to Sarah, the gastroenterologist, refers to Stan, the pediatrician, and the referrals go round and around. And so the answer to this question is you don't have to make your potential clients feel rejected. You just have to put them in the hands of a really solid referral partner. So that's my answer there. And Regina, we love you. You're part of our community, and we love you dearly. And having your why as a constant reminder, yes, it is gold. So I interrupted.
Well, no, that's perfect. This is what we do, folks. We riff. So one of the questions that came in privately was, the answer is yes. You want to indicate and define your specialization based on your branding. And then if they're not inside your red velvet rope, have someone to whom you can refer them. And I have had clients who are criminal defense lawyers who will refer out a client because it's not a fit. And next thing you know, they're getting 2 referrals back because they were clear about what they were working on. And so for my client, Eric, he is very passionate. His life experience made him very passionate about protecting the children in a marriage dissolution situation. So that became his brand, that became his messaging, that became his intake. It all plugs into a system, and it was very congruent with his story on why he focuses on that, not just because it's a lucrative area of practice. So the good news is, even if you think you're niched now, you can do work to get clearer, both in how you talk about what you do and in how you focus. And one of the tools that I use with clients, I decided to call it the client's matter analysis. I thought it might be a clever play on words. But what we do is we look back over the last several years of your clients and your matters. And we create a criteria based on your goals and your values, step 1, and the client values, what the clients are worth. And then we can build a profile and plug that into your client development system. It becomes everything from the marketing on your website to your elevator pitch when you were allowed to be in elevators again. And so when you're clear on the problems you solve and the people you solve them for, and how to talk to them, that's how you know who's in and out. And it will keep you from taking on a sympathy client who you may feel sorry for, but isn't a good fit for you. You need to be very clear about that. And then everything flows from that. Your legal operations, everything flows from the clients you're going to serve. So, Walt,
yeah.
how do you decide once you do that?
So there's another exercise or another frame that we can look at this, and it's a simple frame that I think you're familiar with. It's around that old thing called the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian economist, and he was also a gardener, and he loved growing vegetables. And he was a curious dude, because I like vegetables too, but it wouldn't occur to me to do this. He looked out into his garden and he said, "Isn't that interesting? 20% of my pea pods yield 80% of my peas." And being curious like Pareto is, he's looked around the Italian countryside and wow, 80% of the land is owned by 20% of the landholders. And anyway, that's the genesis of the Pareto principle, which has now been widely applied to suggest that 20% of your efforts lead to 80% of your outcomes. 20% of your clients probably lead to 80% of your revenue. 20% probably provide you 80% of your client satisfaction, your own personal satisfaction. And when I did this analysis, I realized that what I loved to do was to help good young people, like 16 to 22 suburban kids who had gotten themselves into trouble like kids do. They had gotten DUIs, or they'd been shoplifting at Kohl's, or they had petty possession, and they ended up getting arrested. And in this day and age, that could be a death sentence for kids going to college or getting financial aid. And so their parents would come to me and I would help them. I had great relationships and I was able to create amazing outcomes for these kids. And I focused my entire effort on this. And I had an incredibly profitable practice and a deeply satisfying practice because I was able to focus on that sweet 20%. And so I encourage you to think about the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle in your own practice. Regardless of whether it's family law or estate planning or criminal law or a combination of that, look at your practice, look at the things that light you up, and think about how you might apply the Pareto principle to coming up with the clients that you're going to focus on to bring in your doorway.
Absolutely. And there's so much power. Narrow is power. And we encourage you to do that. Every single time our clients have done that, they're happier and they make more money. So the next hidden obstacle may not be really all that hidden. You might even know you're doing it, but it's hard to break out of it. And it's getting the support that you need. It looks like, when you're building your practice, you're making all the decisions, you're the hub of the wheel. And you're spending a lot of time on non-legal work like bookkeeping and fixing the copier and ordering supplies and getting the coffee. You're the first one in the office. You're the last one to leave. You take work home with you most nights and weekends. And if you're lucky, you get a day off. Oftentimes you're running behind, late for appointments, and your staff is constantly interrupting you. And then you get frustrated because they don't do their jobs the way you feel they should. And then your clients start calling you to find out what's going on. And so when you're trying to be everything to everyone, you can feel like you never have enough time. You can feel out of control and frantic and frazzled, like you're pulled through the day. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to folks and just said, if I can just get through this next thing, this next week, this next court hearing, if I can just get through that. And yeah, sometimes that happens, but that's no way to live a life. And that frustration comes out with yourself. It comes out with your staff. It can create all kinds of issues. It can even keep you from getting clients because nobody wants to hire a lawyer if they feel like the lawyer's so busy they're out of control. So it's important to get yourself some help. And that's what we're going to talk about now.
So I will not tell the story of the morning of my appellate court argument when the copier went down because the toner cartridge was out and I had no clue how to put the toner cartridge in. And I ended up in the appellate court with like really black, sooty hands because I got the toner cartridge. No, that's not the story I wanted to tell.
Okay.
The story I wanted to tell was about our client, Lorna. Lorna is an amazingly talented family practitioner, and she thought I walked on water as a business coach. She thought I transformed her life, because in the first 6 weeks, she brought in an additional $100,000. She thought I was a magician. What I told her to do was, Lorna, you actually need to get somebody to help you send out your bills because you haven't done it in 6 months. This was a revelation. She sent out her bills and she had about $100,000 come in the door in the first 6 weeks. But what we tend to do as lawyers, particularly early in the go, but we see it late in the go, Lorna was in practice like 6 or 7 years, is that we tell ourselves that we can do it, that we don't want to get have the expense to do it, that we don't want to have to explain it to other people. Nobody can do it the way we can. So when you overcome this little obstacle, you can open up vast reservoirs of time. And I want just to introduce the most pernicious of all business costs, the business cost that you are not focusing on in this moment in time, and that is opportunity cost. If the effective hourly rate that you have is $400 an hour or $300 an hour or $600 an hour, whatever your effective hourly rate is, that's a lot more than the effective hourly rate of somebody you would pay to replace the toner cartridge. And yet, for some reason, we take all of this stuff on. And so when you realize the pernicious opportunity cost and you begin to surround yourself with other people who will help you, you'll then open up more productivity, more resourcefulness. You'll have more time off. You'll reduce your stress and overwhelm. And you'll be a whole lot more happy and satisfied with your practice. And we get so tunnel visioned on this, but the good news is you don't have to reinvent the wheel to fix this. There are lots of examples where lawyers get more control, more time, more money, more energy when they let go of trying to do everything themselves. So how do you do it? The very first question I ask people is, where are you finding the most friction in this moment in time? For some people, it's answering the phone. Well, God made voicemail for a reason. For some people, it's email. We have, in our business, we have hundreds of emails coming in every single day. And email can be, I call it the monster under the bed. It's this thing that haunts us all of the time. What is that place of friction for you? That's the first place you should then think about this next important question that you should be asking at every moment in time. Who else should be doing this? Like Lorna discovered, there ought to be a bookkeeper, somebody collecting, watching over your accounts receivable, somebody perhaps doing intakes, screening those people so that you have the right people in your conference room, somebody fielding those early client inquiries, some questions or things that go wacky in the night with your website or your opt-ins, answering the phone. All of these things are potential friction points for busy practitioners. And a really important question in light of opportunity cost is, who else should be doing this?
And there's no magic on where to start. Pick one of the areas of friction. And remember that when you're really frustrated, it's hard to think clearly. So you need to step back and break down really what's involved with this, how long it actually take, when it needs to happen. Because when I've done with clients, we create a really clear picture of the situation. My client, Jim, has an office assistant. He couldn't do everything that he wanted him to do. And I asked, well, what have you described that you need her to do? I said, well, I need her to call an accounts receivable. I said, but she won't do it. I said, did you explain to her how to do it? Did you give her scripts? Did you give her a procedure to do it? No. Would it be helpful if we did that? So once we provided her the words to use and he practiced with her and it gave her some confidence, money started rolling in. Once he gave her permission to nag him to make sure he got his bills done, pre-bills done on time, money started coming in. And so when you break things apart into their component pieces, you can create profiles and the individual tasks become much clearer and easier. You need to get out of the fog of the frustration and take a step back and break it down, like taking the Lego blocks apart so you can see what's going on. Now, the first time you delegate something like this that you've been holding pretty close, it can require some courage. But remember this truth. When you're not getting to it, you don't actually have control over it. You think you do, but it's not happening. But when you delegate it to an assistant or a bookkeeper or your secretary, and you give them a standard and a procedure to follow, you actually have more control, even though you're not doing it yourself. So what are 3 things you know you're doing, but you know you shouldn't be doing? You might get more than 3. Flip the script. Rather than starting with the mindset that you have to do it, what if you made the case that it's better to have someone else do it? Write one down, work on it tonight, take action on it, and you'll see a change.
Love that, Douglas. And I want to keep this show moving, man.
Sure.
So we've covered 3 obstacles so far. And obstacle 1 was not having that target. You can't hit a target you cannot see. You cannot drive blindfolded and expect to arrive at the destination. Obstacle number 2 was not having a system to bring the right clients in the door. And even before having the system to bring the right clients in the door was having a clear idea of who that ideal client was. Obstacle number 3 was engaging with that pernicious opportunity cost thing. Obstacle 4 is going to be one of the biggest and hardest to see. But for those of you who may feeling like, oh my God, they're giving me a whole lot of stuff to do and I'm not quite sure where to start, I want to just pre-frame. We usually save this to the end, but I want, just so that you don't go into overwhelm or get discouraged about this, one of the things that we are happy to do, we don't have a lot of bandwidth to do, but we're happy to do, is to spend some time on a strategy call with you. We have a limited number of spots. We usually pop this in at the end, but Doug, I would just be grateful. I know that I've taken a lot from what you've shared today. And I want our colleagues to know that this is not just one and done. We're happy to support. And so if a strategy call, no obligation strategy call would serve you, you can just go over there on the right-hand side. Doug has popped in a button where you can go and book that. So obstacle 4 is the biggest one and the hardest to see. And I love teaching this one because it's really changing the entire landscape of how you see what you do. We come out of law school. Many of us, certainly baby boomers and older millennials, we believed in the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If I put my shingle out there, I'll make lots of money. And even to this day, in younger lawyers, I see, I'm a great practitioner. I don't understand why I'm not making the money I thought I would be making. And so the mindset shift that I'm about to share with you is the most important mindset shift of all that you can make. Absolutely. And that's realizing that you actually have 2 jobs. Oh, I can't do the job I already am doing. No, you actually have 2 really cool jobs. Job number 1 is, go out there and be a great lawyer. Job number 2 is realize that you are, in addition to that job, the chief executive officer of your business or the chief operating officer of your business, and see the world as somebody who is actually looking down on your business, thinking about how you're going to grow and scale that business as a COO, not in the weeds of your practice, but looking at it from the perspective of a chief operating officer, a chief executive officer. And I would suggest, this is going to be way too much to take in right now, but bear with me. I would suggest that it is almost equally important to be the CEO/COO of your business as it is to be the practitioner. And when you can embrace that role, your business will grow exponentially. One of my clients, a wonderful employment lawyer, Jason, when he came to me, he was stuck at 250,000. If you're stuck at 250,000, that's a very predictable place to get stuck at. Another really predictable place to get stuck is around 750,000. Another really predictable place is 1 million. There are predictable thresholds where people get stuck, and new level, new devil, new and better problems. But Jason was stuck at $250,000 because he was just a practitioner. And I asked him to embrace this idea of becoming the chief operating officer. No, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a business owner. Well, he began to do this thing that his coach invited him to do, and began to see himself sitting at the head of the boardroom, and began to grow and scale a team. And this year, within fairly short order, he will bust $1 million. He'll bring in $1 million gross this year because he's embraced the CEO mindset. And it's a growth mindset. It's an expansive mindset. Is to see how you see yourself with respect to your business. And so it is easy to get stuck. But if you look at it from that position that Michael Gerber talks about, that working on your business is every bit as important as working in your business, when you actually take time, blocks of time, and begin to identify those blocks of time to work as a marketer, to work as a networker, to work on the marketing strategies of your business, to look at the strategic growth of your business, and not try to move it, fit it into little tiny crevices of your practice, but to actually embrace this concept of working on your business and understanding that it's as important, if not more important, than being a great practitioner. And so I want to invite you to think about, like Jason did, how could I begin to think about my business as opposed to a practice? Businesses, they bring their teams together. They talk about their why. Businesses come together. They collaborate and they co-create together growth strategies. So there are really small steps you can begin to take, even if it's just this is where Jason started, just brought his team together once a week. And his team began to get excited, and they wanted to engage the why. And all of a sudden, people wanted to take things from him, and the business began to grow. So I want to invite you to think about what you can do to overcome this obstacle, to step into the role of CEO of your business.
And block out some of your best time to do this work. As Walt said, don't leave it till 2 p.m. on a Friday. And what we're talking about is developing your leadership skills, because every successful leader has brought a team around them and has allowed the team. They don't look to the CEO for the person with all the answers as the oracle. The CEO is the visionary, the facilitator who draws the team and engages them. And that requires some specific strategies. And that's one of the things we do with our clients, is help them bridge that gap from being the legal manager to being the leader. And that's a whole nother program. But I want to get
a program for that.
We have a program for that. I want to get to the final obstacle today, because this final obstacle is pervasive and it kind of bridges every other one that we talked about. And when I sit with clients and say, well, all right, how do you know that your team is doing what you want to do? And they say, well, I've told them what they want to do, what I want them to do. I said, well, okay, have you written it down? No. and then they're frustrated. The failure to document your operating procedures is one of the things that's going to hold you back from growing your practice. And you might know you need this if everything is taking longer than it should. You're constantly having to reinvent the wheel. In business, we call it rework, sending things back to be redone again. The same mistake is happening over.
That sounds much fancier than reinventing the wheel.
It is. I know. Rework is like a whole consultant term. But if your staff is really stressed out with you and you're stressed out with them, if you've got papers everywhere, your electronic files aren't much better. If you're not getting paid on time or in full, you might have a problem with your operating procedures. And it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive to do this. Well, why don't you share? We had a client, we help almost every client with this. Why don't you tell them about a time that we did that?
So Lorna, again, is a great example of this. She was running around always with all of these procedures in her mind, and the files were everywhere. They were in her car, they were on her computer, they were on her laptop, and everything was scattered. And the result was that she was awake at night worrying that she had missed deadlines, awake at night worrying that she was missing court appearances, and stuff was falling into the cracks. And when we create we can start by creating very simple standard operating procedures. They can be more complex. Many of you probably use a system like Clio, or at least you own a system like Clio. Sorry, you should have done that while you were sipping. So many of you own Clio, but there's project management in that, which many of you are not using. But let's come back to like basics, because the basics are really easy. There's a reason why the 17-year-old burger flipper in San Francisco can make the same burger as the 17-year-old in the Bronx, who is the same burger as the 17-year-old in Paris. And that's because there's a standard operating procedure for how long to cook the burgers. Ultimately, this becomes an operating manual, but that's a whole other program too. But the idea is there a documented way? And it can begin with something so stupidly simple like a checklist, except the pilot of your aircraft, I've been flying again, it's so good. The pilot of your aircraft goes through a checklist to be sure the plane is safe. In the operating room, they have a checklist to be sure stuff's not left inside you. Checklists are really super simple standard operating procedures where you reduce the likelihood of error, malpractice, and increase your reliability, your productivity, your consistency, your client satisfaction, makes your staff happier. You're able to sleep better at night. So these standard operating procedures don't have to be difficult. Now, we have a way of thinking about it in our own company. We have a standard operating procedure for creating standard operating procedures. And our standard operating procedure is anytime we're doing something for the very first time, we document it. And we do it in a stupidly simple way. We run a little screen sharing video called Loom. And so there's a video of us doing the thing. And then we archive that. So SOP, the first thing for the creating SOPs is if we're doing something for the first time, if we're teaching something for the first time, or if we're on a helpline trying to sort something out. And over the course of years, we have created this vast treasure trove of standard operating procedures, and it can just start wherever you are. So I invite you to take a step in the right direction of creating simple standard operating procedures, and they will set you free.
And as I did with my client, Jim, you do not need to be the person to write them. He sat down with his assistant and articulated the objective, much like Walt did. She was thrilled with the idea of having more certainty about what to do and how to do it and to make him more satisfied so she could succeed. You were giving her a playbook. And he said, well, write down what you do. So she wrote the first draft. They went through it together. They tweaked it a little bit. She owned that. And when she owned it, it was better than he ever could have done. And he didn't have to write it. So you might articulate what you want to have accomplished, but if you have a team of people, let them do it. If you don't, write it simply, and then don't just hand it to them and say, here's what you do. It's got to be a two-way street. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be very, very simple to start. I see people dive into this, especially people who are perfectionists, who want to take screenshots and say, go here and click here and do this and do that. It's way too much detail. Start at the reverse engineer it. What are the big steps that have to happen? And if you need more detail, then you can write it down. This is, and it applies to any part of your business, whether it's how you hire people, your client intake process. I had one of my criminal defense lawyer clients was complaining that the parents of the children he represented continued to call him and ask questions about Johnny or Susie's case. I said, well, you answer the same way every time, right? He said, yeah. I said, well, what if you wrote it down and share it and had your staff send it to him? Client satisfaction went up. His phone calls went down. The parents were under control. That's an operating procedure.
Love that. And this is a place where it's easy to kind of go into overwhelm. And as I said to you before, if we can support you in simply identifying simple places to start, that would be a great subject for a strategy call if you wanted one. And as I said, we only have a handful of those, but that button should be over there somewhere on the right-hand side still. So please, please, please grab it if we can support you, because, you know, as I said before, the ideas are great, but the implementation is key, and we want to keep you moving. And so I'm cognizant, Doug, that we're climbing dangerously close to the top of the hour. So can you begin to take us home?
Yes. So we've shared with you a lot of good insider secrets today, giving you some of the most common blind spots and obstacles. You can build systems to avoid reinventing the wheel, hire the right people and motivate them, take back control of your time so you never have to wonder what if. We also know that, and from my experience, really smart, busy lawyers need help to do this, because it's not something you do every day. It's not something you've been trained on. And when you work with an experienced guide, you will get there stronger and faster than you might have gone there by yourself. And so if you sign up for the strategy call, we're going to help you tackle one of your hidden obstacles. We're going to give you some insights about how private coaching works and see if it's for you. And if you're sitting there thinking, maybe I should think about getting my own coach, then the answer is you're probably ready and we should talk. We might not be a fit, but let's talk anyway, because we're all here doing this for you, to be in service to you and our profession. And as we said to you, Doug and I, we feel so blessed to have had these decades of journeying in the law. We do have the greatest profession on the planet. We get to help people in their time of greatest need. We get to solve complicated problems. We get to do justice. We get to change and impact law. I mean, we have one of those rare professions where when you really begin to reclaim why we came here, we really get to change the world. We get to help a lot of people in the world. And we want for you to be able to do this resourcefully, and for you to show up powerfully. And, you know, in the end, no one is going to really care whether you build more hours or spent more time in the office or networked more or tweeted more or updated your Facebook status more frequently. What will matter will be the experiences that you have had, the lives that you have touched, the love that you have shared. What will matter is not whether you have gotten caught up in the murk of the urgent, but that you have spent the time doing the important. What will matter will be that you have lived without regret, and that you have enjoyed this amazing profession that we share. And that is what we so want for you. We are so grateful for each and every one of you for allowing us to spend this hour with you. If we can serve and support you with a
call, we would love to do that. I saw that someone was saying that there was an issue with the link. We've popped up an alternative link over there, and we would love to serve and support you in that way. And in either event, know that we are together on this extraordinary threshold of a roaring 20s of our own, and we wish you great prosperity and success this year and in the years ahead. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Thanks for coming. Bye for now.